everybody, welcome back to my channel. Mia here. Today's video is going to be very fun, I hope, for you to watch and for me to record. I have lately been watching a lot of try a chapter kind of videos where people try the first chapter of a certain amount of books and then they pick from those books which book they are going to be reading next. And I really need some help picking up the next book to read, so I thought why not go ahead and do one of these videos myself. For those of you who have watched my TBR video for the month of November, you probably already know this, but for those of you who haven't, I really wanted to participate in the Nonfiction November event that is going on this month. Unfortunately, I didn't want to push myself to pick up a ridiculous amount of books if I wasn't gonna be able to read them. And I know that I have been in a big reading slump and it's been very difficult for me to read as much as I used to or as much as I want to. So I thought, why not just take a month off in a way and just kind of relax. I gave myself only 2 books to read. Now, one of those 2 books was really a massive book. It is It by Stephen King, which I am slowly getting through, but not as fast as I had hoped. And the other book was a nonfiction book, and that's how I planned on participating on this event. I don't read nonfiction every single month, so I thought that one nonfiction book a month would still be considered me participating. So the book that I have picked was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Stories from the Crematory, and this is by Caitlin Doughty. This was such an enjoyable read. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much that it left me craving more nonfiction. So I will be having a review for this coming soon, by the way, for those of you who are interested in reviews. So today's video is going to be Try a Chapter Nonfiction Edition, where I'll be trying the first chapter of 5 books which are nonfiction, and hopefully at the end of this video I will be deciding on which book to read next. Before we get started, allow me to just quickly apologize if you get distracted by me sounding like a fish out of water. That is because I am asthmatic, and since I get bigger and bigger and bigger every week because of the pregnancy, my asthma for some reason has been acting up more than usual. So I do feel more often out of breath than I used to before. And the fact that today is one of my cleaning days where I've been deep cleaning the house doesn't necessarily help, as of course there's going to be dust particles in the air when you're cleaning and all that chemical smells as well. So hopefully it's not too distracting, but if I sound like I'm out of breath, that is why. Now, first let me show you the 5 books that I have to choose from, and then I will go ahead and read one chapter of each of those books, and as I finish each chapter, I will tell you my thoughts on that particular first experience. So the first book that I have here is The Pharmacist of Auschwitz, and this is the untold story of Victor Capesius by Patricia Posner. This is actually one of the books that I had in the list of books that I wanted to finish before the end of the year. And if you haven't watched that video, I'll link it somewhere above here. However, I'm not doing very good when it comes to finishing those books in that list. So I thought that this would kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and it would allow me to complete 2 goals if I were to pick it up and finish reading it. So I do want to give it a shot and see how I feel after reading the first chapter. Another book that I have on this list is The Heart of Buddha's Teaching, Transforming Suffering into Peace, Joy, and Liberation, and I cannot pronounce the name of the author, so I'll let you read it. I've been very interested in Buddhism and the whole Buddha life story and the teachings that you can gather from his particular life, and I just collected a bunch of books based on that, but I haven't necessarily read any of them except for a children's book, which I loved. So I thought this was the perfect time to try and read a little bit of this and learn some things and hopefully be able to apply some of the teachings from this book into my lifestyle. So I'll be reading the first chapter of this book as well, and we will see what happens. The next nonfiction book that I have here is Crystal Power, Crystal Healing, and this is by Michael Geiger, and the photographs are by Ines Blurch, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the author's name. I have an issue with pronunciation, but this is something that I've been very interested on. I love crystals, and I love the idea of crystals, energy, and how they can affect humans. So this is just a very interesting topic to me, and this is a beautiful book as well. So I've been wanting to read it for a long time. I got it a while back. So I hope that the first chapter is interesting. This book seems to be written a little bit more, based on how I see it, seems to be written a little bit more like a textbook format, just the way that everything is displayed in the inside of the book. However, I'm still hopeful that since the topic is something I really enjoy, I'll be able to get through it quickly if it's interesting to me. So I'll be reading the first chapter of this one as well, of course. Then I also have Jose Marti and the Global Origins of Cuban Independence by Armando Garcia de la Torre. And this particular person, Jose Marti, is a huge figure in my home country, which is Cuba, for those of you who don't know. So this is something that hits home for me and is just very interesting. I've always wanted to know more about his life because I left my home country at such a young age that I didn't get to go through all that in school where I will learn all these things. But he is one of my favorite poets, and he's also one of my favorite children literature writers. So I thought, why not read a little bit about his life and learn of all the things that he accomplished during his life. Very interested in reading this, so I'll go ahead and give the first chapter a try. It's a relatively small book, so if I pick it up, I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish it before the end of the month. And the last book I'll be reading the first chapter of is Beautiful Babies, Nutrition for Fertility, Pregnancy, Breastfeeding, and Babies' First Foods. And this is by Kristen Michaelis, and it has a foreword by Joelle Salatin. Now, this is a book I picked a while back before even trying to conceive a baby, and I meant to read it before getting pregnant, but unfortunately I just kept postponing it, and I still haven't read it. So I think it's one of those books that I should really read before I actually have my baby, so that if there's anything in it for me to learn and be able to apply towards the feeding of my baby, I'll be able to do that then. So hopefully this is a good one as well. I have high hopes for it, and we'll see. So out of all of these books, I think I'll start with The Pharmacist of Auschwitz, The Untold Story by Patricia Posner. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the first chapter of this book, and I'll be back to tell you what I think. So I just finished reading the first chapter of The Pharmacist of Auschwitz by Patricia Posner. And I have to say, I'm quite surprised with how easily to read the writing was. Pretty much the first chapter is really short, so not too much happens there, but there are two different stories per se, like two very short stories of two Jewish people who have known this particular pharmacist, Victor, since before the Holocaust. So when they knew him then, he was a very friendly, very likable person, and they both had a very nice, normal relationship with him as their pharmacist. And when they see him again, they see him at the Auschwitz camp, right when they are being unloaded from those trains where they would carry them in. And then they would do those lines where doctors would pretty much just kind of separate them into two separate lines, or as many lines as they would eventually separate them into, deciding who was going to work for them and who they had no need for. So that's when they saw him there. And one of them was able to have a very short conversation with him. He was hoping he would help him somehow, you know, from what was going on. Obviously, he didn't help him. As short as it was already heartbreaking. So we'll see where this book takes it. I haven't read any of the other chapters yet, so I don't know where this will be when it comes to the possibility of me wanting to pick this one up. But so far, I did enjoy the first chapter. I think I will be picking up next The Heart of Buddha's Teaching, Transforming Suffering into Peace, Joy, and Liberation by this author. And I'll read the first chapter. I'll be right back and tell you my thoughts on it. So I'm back. The first chapter was very small. The first chapter is from page 3 to page 6. So it's another 3 pages chapter. But it was really interesting. In that first chapter, pretty much he is telling you, the author is telling you about how Buddha always taught his apprentices and anyone who would listen to embrace their suffering. That suffering is part of life, and if you learn to not ignore it but not be consumed by it either, then you will learn to take it as a lesson, learn from it, grow from it, and make it part of who you are. So pretty much the examples that he used was that if you are hungry, if you're suffering because you're going without food, then you learn to appreciate food even more, so that when you do have it, you learn to value it and appreciate it and to not be wasteful. And pretty much things along the line of that. So that's what the first chapter was. He also shared a poem that he had written in the past that has to do with that topic. So I thought it was very interesting, because I have to say I agree with it. I think that sometimes we can either be completely overpowered by our suffering, and other times we try to just camouflage the suffering or ignore it like it's not even there. And I think that the best thing to do is, as he says, to just embrace it. It's part of who you are. Life is gonna be tough at times, but those tough situations and those moments where you suffer, if you make them part of who you are and you embrace them, you learn from them, in the end it's just gonna make you a better person. So I really did enjoy this. I have to say I'm really intrigued on what else he has to say in his book, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I would have continued on if I didn't have all the other ones to read the first chapter of. So this one is one I'm really interested on, but we will see. Next, I'm gonna be reading the first chapter of Crystal Power, Crystal Healing by Michael Ganger, I think is how it's pronounced. So I will be back as soon as I am done reading the first chapter, and I'll tell you my thoughts. All right, I am back. It took me a little longer because I was a little bit confused as to what was considered a chapter in this book. When you first start reading the book is separated in 3 sections. So each section has more subsections, and then I don't know how to explain it. Like, I read the foreword by the writer, which was really interesting actually. It was about his childhood and how he got motivated and interested in mineral stones and crystals, and pretty much how he developed that passion, which was really interesting. And then I picked up on the first chapter, and it's 1.1, The Origins of Minerals. And then it's got a few different sections, so they're very short sections. Therefore, I decided to read everything up until I got to the point of the 1.2 section, which is where crystals, which is the 1.2 section, begins. So the whole first section was all about the origin of minerals, how minerals are created, the different kinds of minerals, and which stones those minerals will eventually become, and all of that stuff. So it hasn't gone into the correlation between crystals and their healing power yet. So far it's just introducing you to minerals and stones and how they're developed and all of that stuff. I personally found it to be very, very interesting, which is why I was able to continue on. I can't wait to keep on reading as it is going into the crystals chapter. I think that's going to be a very interesting one as well. So I have to say, I really, really enjoyed this. Moving on, the next book I'll be reading the first chapter of is going to be José Martí and the Global Origins of Cuban Independence by Armando Garcia de la Torre. So let's see what this book has to offer. Alright you guys, I am back. I just finished reading the first chapter of this book and it was a pretty long one. It ends in page 33. So the first section of the first chapter in this book is a lot of different theories from professionals that study this kind of historical, field, and they are talking about what they thought that José Martí necessarily meant with things that he said and the way that he thought. So they go extensively into nationalism and the meaning of a nation and what that meant to him. So at the very beginning, it was just very much like reading a school textbook. It was not very interesting, I have to say. The subject matter is interesting, but the way that the beginning of the chapter was written was not necessarily that interesting. Then it goes more into some of the accomplishments that he had during his life, and that I found much more interesting. Pretty much they talk about his way of thinking and all of the things that he did, not just for his people, but for humanity as a whole, for his time. He was very much a believer in equality for all people, for everyone. He was very supportive of independence within each nation, and he was supportive of freedom towards slavery and a lot of things that during his time that was not quite common from a white man. So that part was more interesting. I loved when he got into the parts of his education and all the different languages that he was able to speak at such a young age. So although I am enjoying this and I am very interested in finishing this book, I think there's a couple of books that I've previously read the first chapter of which caught my attention a little bit more. And the last book that I have left for that one chapter challenge is Beautiful Babies, Nutrition for Fertility, Pregnancy, Breastfeeding, and Babies' First Foods by Kristen Michaelis. So I'll be reading the first chapter of this book and I will be back to tell you my thoughts on it. So I am back. I just finished reading the first chapter of Beautiful Babies. Pretty much Kristen Michaelis will tell you from the beginning that she is not a nutritionist, she's not a doctor. She is a mom who is very interested in nutrition and what goes into the food that we eat. So at the very beginning, she is very, very critical of our food nowadays as a whole, and she just pretty much tells you everything you're doing is wrong. So she would tell you if you're trying to eat organic food, you're wasting your time because most of the food labeled as organic is not necessarily healthier for you or actually organic and stuff like that. So I don't really know how to explain everything she said, but pretty much she just went and murdered our food industries of today and criticized all the things that they put into the food that we eat. So I can really see her point of view. She pretty much just thinks that the only way to go is to eat food from local farms or small companies that don't process their food that way, that are much more naturally produced. And I think that's a great way. I think that supporting the local farmers is a fantastic thing to do, and I think that yes, your food might be healthier. I have to say, she does believe fully in what she's saying, and she will sell it to you. So I am interested in continuing this read. Alright, so I've read the first chapter of all of these 5 books. Now it is time to choose which one I'll be reading next. And I have to say, it's a difficult decision because I really did enjoy all of the books that I just read the first chapter of. I think I'm torn between 2 of the books. I think I will have to pick between these 2 first because I really did enjoy all the information that she has in this book. I can tell that she really researched her book before writing it. So I feel that I will gain and learn a lot from reading this book, and so will I from this one as well. And I don't know, this is a topic I'm really interested in, and this is one as well. I don't know which one to pick. I'm not sure which of these 2 I should go for first. I think since this one is a smaller book than this one, I think I'm gonna go with this one first, because this book has in the back part of it, like, there's quite a chunk of the book that is all recipes. So I think this one will be faster to read. I'm gonna go with this one. I'm gonna pick this book next as my nonfiction read for this month, and hopefully I will get to finish reading it by the end of the month. Once I do, I will make sure to do a review on it for those of you who love watching review videos. I've had so much fun making this video. I really hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys have read any of these books that I've mentioned today and you think that another book should be the first one for me to pick, or if you have a recommendation for which one I should pick next, please go ahead and write it in the comments down below. If you guys do enjoy this kind of videos, I will try to make more of them because I think they're very helpful and very fun. So let me know by giving me some thumbs up, and if you would like to see more of my videos, please go ahead and subscribe. I usually try to post a video every Wednesday, and if I have time, I'll post an extra video on Saturdays. Well, I shall see you on the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.